I've just got back from Auschwitz in Poland, and it's been a goal for many years to go and experience the museum that they have there, because it's an important part of history that has impacted me way more than I thought it would. So I'm a few days removed from the experience, and I think this video might come with a little bit of a trigger warning because of the content that I'm going to talk about. And it's not easy to hear these stories that I'm about to relate to you, but I actually want to relay because the history and the remembering is incredibly important. So we did a guided tour of the Auschwitz site. It was very, people say it's eerie and it's dark and it's all this stuff. And the biggest word that I think I can come up with of what it really was is moving, deeply moving. Obviously harrowing, hearing the stories, just horrendous in so many ways. But it's impacted me because it helps me put my own life into perspective. You know, when we have problems and we complain about trivial shit, like, you know, when you're feeling low, you're feeling down, you're feeling depressed, your mental health's not good. Like 2 days before, well actually the day before, sorry, that I actually went to Poland, I was in Newcastle and I bumped into a mate of mine who I've known for 20 odd years, and we got chatting and I said I was going to Poland, and he said, "Oh, you're doing Auschwitz?" And I said, yeah, we're going to do that too. He said, "I don't think I could do it." He said, "My mental health's been pretty bad lately." He said, "But mind you, I do know a guy whose mental health was really bad. He booked onto the trip and he did the museum tour, and he said he came back and it completely sorted him out, because he realised that what he was suffering was nowhere near, not even 1% of the extent of what these people in this concentration camp endured." Now, I can see now from being there how that could be the case. Like, have you ever noticed how we think we have problems? Like, I'm not trying to disrespect anybody or disregard your issues or your mental health or anything like that, but I am saying, if you really put it into perspective, because perspective is everything, if you hear the stories I'm about to tell, and hopefully one day you get over there and actually take the tour and understand this happened in human history and modern history as well. You're talking a mere 80 years ago that this happened. I think it will completely change your perspective on your own life and how much you have to be grateful for, and how you can take a real lesson from the experience and potentially even from what I'm about to relate to you right now. You may have seen the Hollywood films, you may have seen you may have read the books or the documentaries or whatever. I can tell you firsthand from taking a guided tour from a very experienced worker in the area that nothing quite compares to the horrors that you visually see evidence of and you stand in the presence of. So when we walked in, there is a sign above the gates that says, "Work will set you free." The irony is that all of the people who went to Auschwitz, all the Jews mostly, who were boarded on a train, and they were boarded on a train willingly. They actually got on the train because they had been lied to by the Germans. The Germans said, "You are going away," and the living conditions were terrible. So the Germans promised all the Jews and everybody that they would have jobs and they would be paid and get change accommodation. And so they got them to pack their belongings. They allowed them to take their belongings on to the train, and they even said, "Mark your suitcases, because when we have finished your initial induction, you'll have to come back and pick up your suitcase." They got on believing they were going to a job. And then they got on the train and they got off the train and they started to go in a line for health reasons, and they would segment the people to say, "Have you just joined this line over here?" If they were older than 40, if they had any kind of health condition, they were just sent to a separate line, and then if they were eligible enough to work, were sent to another line. And the ones that were not eligible to work were sent to a line that was casually walking along, didn't have any clue, and told them that they would be segmented into a certain area, but before so they needed to take a shower. And everyone, women, children, old men, were asked to strip and take their belongings into the shower and even remember where they'd placed their belongings before they were asked to go into the shower. Now the shower room held around 1,000 people, if not a bit more. And so hundreds and hundreds of people would enter this large room with shower heads on the wall. The Germans had manipulated so much that they even installed fake shower heads to manipulate the people into going into these areas to pretend that they were going into a shower. They shut the door and they dropped cyanide, toxic, poisonous gas in through the roof, while 800-900 people, women, children, were present and killed them by asphyxiation in the masses. It took about 15 minutes apparently of a horrendous death where they couldn't breathe, and minutes after, people would go in with gas masks and they would chop the hair off, and they would use the hair for materials, and they would trade the hair for other things. They would pull out anyone's gold teeth, steal their jewellery, and they would then sell that or whatnot, and then they would cart the bodies upstairs and burn them in a furnace, just like that. And moments earlier, they were just told they were going for a shower. And in peak times, in Auschwitz-Birkenau, they slaughtered, mercilessly murdered up to 2,500 people a day. And I was standing right where that happened. Thousands of innocent women, children. You're talking 4, 5, 6-year-olds told that they're just going to have a shower. And it reminds you, as well, there's several other stories, a few of which I'll talk about as you're going through. Obviously, that was kind of the end of the tour, that part, where they told you about that. And I was standing in that bit actually, and it was -12. And it was open air, so there was a wind chill as well. It was about -16 when we were standing there. And we had all the winter gear on. I've got mountain climbing gear, I've got the gloves, I've got the buff and wind resistant coats. And these people who were working in that area, who were forced to work against their will, were working in pyjamas. And back then, 80 years ago, the winters were worse because global warming's coming. The winters aren't as bad now in those areas. And that was so cold, I can't even begin to tell you how cold we were, standing there for 40 minutes with our gear on. And these people had to work in pyjamas in winters colder than this. Unbelievable, unfathomable conditions. When we were taken through the museum, another part of the museum, they told a story of how they were allowed to write to family, but every letter was monitored, and all they had to write was, "Hi, I'm fine, I'm doing okay, I'm healthy." And they were being brutally assaulted, treated horrifically every single day. But a lot of the people had families back home, relatives, and the Germans knew where they were. And if they didn't comply, they said, "We'll bring your family here." And by force and manipulation, they made them work a lot manual labor, laying train tracks. They made them also do useless work. So these people were severely malnourished, dehydrated. They had no clean drinking water. They'd get fed from one barrel of really weak soup, and they'd get a certain drink of coffee and one slice of bread a day. And you've maybe seen the pictures. These people were walking skeletons, and they made them do hard physical activity. They'd make them carry a stone boulder for a mile and back for no reason. No reason. Obviously, the conditions were really bad. There was a story of a guy who, he was so cold that he managed to put a vest out of a cement sack, and he put it under his pajamas. And then one of the wardens found it and beat him savagely within an inch of his life just for trying to keep warm. The punishments, if somebody misbehaved, the punishments they used to have was there was a stone cubicle that they had to crawl into, and it was no bigger than my hands here, no bigger than 1 meter squared. And 4 people had to get in this and stand overnight. There was no room to sit down. They stayed in barracks in extreme temperatures in winter and summer, where the winters were -20. The summers were 35 degrees with barely no water, and they were forced to sleep in bunk beds with 8 to a bed and no toilet, just buckets. You can imagine the stench, you can imagine the hygiene, you can imagine the just unbelievable conditions that these people had to endure. And you walk through like a little bit of a maze style thing with photographs of every single person, and all these photographs were taken at the start when they actually looked healthy. They didn't really know what was going to happen. Some of the photographs are actually smiling because they're brought in a false sense of security. They're brought to Auschwitz as believing they're going to work. And this was the Germans' plan to eradicate the Jews mostly. There was mostly Jews. Over 1 million Jews died there. And they were literally manipulated completely from start to finish. You may have heard of the shoes that are there. There's a whole 2 enormous glass compartments in the museum where thousands upon thousands, tens of thousands of shoes are. Real people's shoes. You walk around the corner and there's hundreds and hundreds of children's shoes. And you look behind you and there's multiple thousands of sets of human hair. And apparently there was over 2 tons of hair recovered from Auschwitz. You know how light hair is. 2 tons. That gives you an idea of the magnitude of the absolute atrocity that happened over there. And it was like nothing I'd ever experienced. And obviously there's a lot more to this story. There's a lot more just oddness and things you can't quite comprehend with your brain. The soldiers, if you can call them that, the people who mercilessly beat these people and tortured them, were family men. So they'd do a shift in Auschwitz for 10, 12 hours. They'd travel down the road half an hour back to their family. And they'd sit with their kids and play with their kids and have a nice warm meal and go back the next day like it was fucking nothing. And it makes you angry, it makes you upset, it makes you can't contemplate humanity that it can get that low. The absolute depths of it. The guy at the top was a mass manipulator, an unbelievable character of influence somehow, and people believed that this was the way that the world should go. It's fucking crazy. It's beyond crazy. Fear was used. If they didn't comply, they got fear against their family, all the rest of it. But the idea, like, at the end of the tour, before they sign off, the woman obviously thanks you and says, I know this has been hard. And me and Tracy did not speak to each other for 4.5 hours. When you're getting told the stories and you're walking slowly through what happened and you're actually in the environment, the exact place where this happened, you can't quite believe it's true. But you see the evidence, you see the pictures, you see the physical evidence that they still have. And we literally didn't say a word for 4.5 hours, and nobody we had a clan of about 15 people in our tour. Nobody talked. It's silent because it's a moving, impactful experience in your life. And the woman at the end said, thank you so much. I understand this is hard, but what I want you to take away from it is remembering that people label these Nazi soldiers as beasts and animals. But she says they're not. They're human beings. And it was human on human that did this. And we must absolutely remember the atrocities of these times to not repeat them ever again in the existence of humanity. And this is fucking modern history as well. This is not like what happened 3,000 years ago. This is 80 years ago, man. My granddad was a teenager when this was going on. Not my great-granddad, my granddad, who's still alive. He's 95. He was like a teenager when this was going on. It's hard to think about. It's really hard to think about. And I think one thing that it's really helped with, and I like to portray to people a lot of the time, is we are so fucking fortunate. If you've stuck with us this long on this video, this is not done for likes, shares, or anything in between. It's done for impact. Because I need reminded, just as anyone else, how fucking fortunate we really are. And we have the audacity sometimes to complain that life's hard sometimes, that life's tough, that I'm having a bad day because someone's not got back to us, because I can't quite go out this weekend, or I haven't got as much money in my bank as I wanted. Like, we've got warmth, we've got food on the table, we've got a roof over our heads, most of us have got jobs, a fucking Netflix subscription, and yet we still complain. We complain about the government and the world. We are living in a fucking beautiful, beautiful time in history to be able to have all these luxuries, to be able to have this level of healthcare that we've got, to be able to have the choices and opportunities that we've got literally within the fucking touch of a button. The travel that we can go through, the people we can meet, the experiences we have, the food that we can eat within minutes. And these people had fuck all and the worst. I don't know what you've taken from this video. It's been a difficult video to do this, to be honest. It still hits me. It's obviously raw because it's just been the last few days. But I want to remember this. I want this video to stay up. I want this to remember. I don't want to forget this experience, because I know what it's like. You get back to life and you just forget. right? You have a hard time, and when the pain's not there, you forget, and then you go back into what's convenient, like complaining and bitching and moaning and thinking it's harder for you and all the rest. Like, and I'm not taking away from your problems, and I don't mean to disrespect you in any way, but I hope this has helped you reflect a bit, that you've got so much to be grateful for, man. We are fucking privileged people. And if you ever get the chance, don't be like the woman behind us in the restaurant. We sat in the restaurant like a few hours later, and she was like, why would anyone in that right mind want to go through all that pain and death? No way we would go there. And I just thought, me and Tracy looked at each other and we're just like shaking our heads like, I'm so glad that I got to go there and realise that. I'm so glad that I was emotionally moved. See, because people like her will just cover their eyes to the world, and everything will be harder for her because she'll be like, victim me. And we're like, we've got fuck all to complain about. We've got fuck all to complain about. We need to really like level up our thinking, be more grateful, show more compassion and love to people, appreciate what we fucking have more so than ever. Because complaining and bitching and moaning about how it's harder for you and the world's fucked and the UK's fucked and all that just gets you feeling low, negative. That pessimistic energy spreads, man. I think we need a more grateful energy, a more, dare I say, in the context of this video, dare I say, a more upbeat energy for everyone to spread off. We need that, man, so that we can be a little bit more of a leader and role model. Like, we want to show people how to live, not how to suffer, not how to complain, how to be better. That's life. Show people how to be better, be a leader, be a role model. Hope you've enjoyed this in some strange way. I hope it's been useful to you, I guess. I'll see you on the next one.